Two boys born in the same family, raised by the same parents, living in the same circumstances, and yet they turn out so differently. Now, this is a story that many parents would recognize instantly. And this story, as it applies to us, first of all, as it applies to families. The father of Esau allowed him this total liberty and a kind of freedom from responsibilities, largely because he enjoyed the meat that Esau brought from the wild. He liked the venison, as the King James Version puts it, I think. And he was always pleased that the boy brought home the things that he'd hunted for. And yet, one cannot depend on hunting like that to actually sustain a family or a tribe. One has to put in the drudgery of tending to a flock, of breeding, watching the birth of the new lambs, protecting them from predators, and making sure that you have pasturage for them. In that way, the tribe could grow and expand and expect to be more healthy than depending on hunting. So Rebecca has a sense of what is greater, the looking after the household in a very concrete and real way that requires this kind of sometimes boring drudgery. And yet this is what actually sustains the Hebrews and makes the tribe greater and greater. So we all who have children notice that we can have two daughters, two sons, born close together, or even paternal twins, and they can become so radically different in their attitudes, in the way they live their lives, in the way they face responsibilities, and in the way they conduct themselves toward their community. And this is really a part of what the story is about. The story is telling us that it makes a difference the way the parents interact with the young people, but ultimately the responsibility for a change in one's attitudes and behavior depends on the young person themselves. It probably would not have been really possible for Isaac or Rebekah to make some kind of a profound change in Esau. But his father could have demanded that he look after those responsibilities at home and use hunting as a recreation, not an avocation. That he was going to do it sometimes, as practically everyone in those parts did, but that he would shoulder the actual responsibilities which would be incumbent upon the firstborn. And he is willing not even to challenge Jacob when Jacob says, well, give me your inheritance of your position and your rank, and I'll give you something to eat. And this again is reminiscent of what will happen during the Exodus when the Hebrews come to a difficult time, and they're also willing to sell their inheritance, some of them, to sell their inheritance to go back for a bowl of porridge, a bowl of lentil soup in Egypt, back into bondage. We understand even from the names given to Esau that he was in a kind of bondage to the passions. When he founds the state of Edom, or the tribe of Edom, Edom is red hot, and it's a play on his proclivity to be really burning in the passions, or burning with the passions. So what we have here is that this inner fire, these passions of Esau, have taken him away from his responsibilities and obligations to the whole community as a leader. So really he has forfeited leadership for the sake of pursuing his passions. And Jacob, meanwhile, is the kind of, perhaps someone would say, a little bit dull. He has his sense of the community and the responsibilities. And whatever one could try to teach or try to say to young people who are in the same positions, we can only encourage and try to set an example for them. But the young person has to choose ultimately for themselves. We have to remember too that a young person's personality is formed by the age of 6. And there's really almost nothing we can do to change it after the age of 6. So to spoil a child, this takes place generally before they're 6 years old. After that, they have expectations, and they generally continue to be spoiled because of those expectations, and the parents will yield to those expectations. Because a child who is spoiled has certainly learned how to manipulate his parents, his or her parents. And this is the way this story really applies to us, and when we look at it, we can see our own family in this situation. And we can see these differences between siblings. And we have to realize that a lot of the problem with shaping and forming them has to come before they're 6 years old. Otherwise, you're not going to change very much. The only thing that can happen is for the young person to come to a realization that the path they're following is negative, perhaps destructive, and determined to change their lives. And then they can cooperate with their parents and hopefully cooperate with God's grace to make a real transformation and change in their lives. But after a person is well formed in their personality, it does take quite an immense struggle to make this change. And for a real transformation, it certainly takes the help of divine grace. It does take God's help. And we should learn, hopefully, to be very cautious that we strengthen our children before they're the age of 6 years old, in a sense of being a part of the family, the parish community, having a kind of responsibility and presence, and that we not be spoiling them by yielding to their whims and desires in those first 6 years. If you do, then there's a price to pay later. And that price could be very painful. So this is really the story that's taking place here. Not exactly Cain and Abel. In fact, Esau later forgives his brother Jacob for becoming the firstborn, or filling the rank of firstborn, and receives him back when Jacob returns from the north. So Esau has certain good qualities as well. He ultimately, at first he thinks of killing his brother, but later he forgives him and receives him back as a brother. And they simply go into different parts of the land to take their flocks and their people. But it was necessary to replace Esau with Jacob if the Hebrews were going to found the tribe of Israel and become the apostles of the one true and living God in that part of the world. Jacob would carry that through. Esau, well, it's very doubtful. So even for his good qualities, he still would have fallen short. And this is why God chose Jacob over Esau, even before they were born, not by predestination, but because he had foreknowledge of the boys. And Rebekah did as well, because she had been told before the birth of the boys by the Lord, by revelation, about them. And it was easy for her to see which one would be the steadfast and steady one, and which one would be the undependable one who would follow the burning passions within him. And she made the choice. So we will apply this and say that this story is about you, it's about us as a family. It's also about us as, say, brothers or children of the same family, realizing how much really depends on us developing a sense of